Hey everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going to make a bag that I have wanted to make since before I've ever started sewing anything. This is a bag design I have seen all over the place. It's a bag design that I have purchased so many times. I've seen patterns for this shape out before, and I always felt like there was no possible way I could ever make it, and we're doing it today, and spoiler alert, it is so much easier than I thought it was going to be. Today, we're gonna make the Dreamer pack, and this pattern comes to us from Fierce Kittens Studios. It's a Loungefly backpack, right? This is like the basis of a Loungefly backpack. If you've been to Disney or some of the other like Universal places like that, this is a very, very popular shape. This miniature backpack with this little miniature gusset pouch sticking outside of it. I have seen so many incredible bag makers make backpacks like this, and I have always wanted to make one, but I was very confident that one, my skill set just wasn't there to do it, and two, I wouldn't be able to do it on a domestic machine. And you guys, we're doing it on a domestic machine, and this is so much easier than I thought it was going to be. I mean, it is surprisingly, I don't want to say easy because if you are a brand new sewer, it's going to be challenging, but if you have experience, it's so good. Just go through the tutorial. You're going to be blown away by how this pocket gets attached. So if you love the material from this is the material that is in July's bag making bee box. This is a subscription. It's a club. Every month you get a bunch of material and a pattern and the video that goes with it. The video is available to everybody. You do not have to be a part of the club in order to make this bag. The pattern is available to everybody. It's been around for a while. A lot of you guys might have already made it. And also, if you love the material, make sure you check out Wonderground Fabrics because that's the supplier of all of it. So let's walk through the bag real quick. First, this adorable little pocket. Now the pattern actually has 3 options for this front panel, and I would say looking at the different pockets, this might be the one that looks the most challenging, but it's not challenging. They're using the material we're using and the way the pattern is written, it is not challenging. You also have the option to do like a accent zipper, with the zipper accent. You can do that. Or it has just like a flat panel with a zipper. So if you want to start out with something easier like that, and you're like, you know what, I just want to tackle these curves before I tackle that curve, go ahead and do that. However, I really do suggest that if you got the motivation and the desire, you gotta make this front pocket because this is what makes the shape of the bag just so incredible. So you have that front pocket, and then you have your main pocket. We're gonna do 2 zipper pulls on here. On the back, this is one of my little strapsies. This is not in the box. I was just using it and I wanted to put it on there. On the back here, we have this beautiful accent that's gonna hold your webbing down. We have an incredible bag tag that's custom made for us by Jade from the Heartwood and Hide. We have these beautiful little accents here. We're also gonna be using webbing for the straps. If you have the subscription box, you will notice you have 2 different colors of webbing. One of them is black and the other one is a surprise, but it's gonna be bright and it's gonna go with the bag so perfectly. I actually made my own bottom webbing here whenever I was testing this out of some vinyl. All right, when we open this bag up, the inside, look at this print. Look at that. It's like neon green, neon pink, sewing inspired with little bees and things. So cute. So the interior does not have any pockets on it. If you want to add a slip pocket, an ID pocket, a zipper pocket, you can definitely do that. This bag has a lot of options to make it as quick as you want it to make it as challenging as you want to make it. Okay, so I'm going to try this little bag on. I think I need to make my straps as short as they will go. So you do have 2 adjustable backpack straps. They are not removable. You could definitely make a couple tweaks to the pattern to create removable backpack straps. However, I wouldn't suggest it because the hardware you would have to use, adding all the swivel hooks, I feel like would make the bag very clunky, but it could make it look really nice too. Okay, so here's the backpack on the front. Let's turn it. Look how stinking cute this is. Look at this cute little backpack. Isn't that so fun? Aren't you thinking of all the different things you can do with this? Like, I know for me, I made this first one right here and I was like, oh my gosh, I just looked at all my material and thought, I want one for every season. I want one for every holiday, for every adventure. I want a cruise one. I want like a Oklahoma one. I want one for everything. I want a clear one. So thank you so much to Fierce Kitten Studio for allowing me to use your pattern on the channel. We've done another one of their bags before. It is so good. I love their patterns so much. I'm totally addicted. I'm gonna go buy all of them. So if there's another one of their patterns you'd like to see featured on the YouTube channel, just leave a comment down below. We'll bump it up to the top of the list. Thank you as always to the Bag Making Bee box for sponsoring today's video. If you're interested in this subscription box, I'll have a link down below. I will tell you it is a monthly subscription box and it is geared more towards advanced beginner to intermediate levels, okay? You don't have to have an industrial machine to make anything. I always use my domestic machine for everything. Some months are more challenging than others. Sometimes material is more thick than others. This is a great advanced beginner, confident beginner. If you've sewn curves, if you've sewn zippers, I think you can 1000% make this bag if you're using this type of material. If you're not part of the subscription, I will have links for the material similar to this or the exact material. I would highly suggest you use a lightweight vinyl for this front pocket and then a light to medium weight, more medium weight vinyl for the exterior. We're not using any interfacing or stabilizer today. And we don't need to. It holds structure really well based off just the material. The more stabilizer and interfacing, if you add foam, it's gonna have a lot of a great, wonderful, thick structure. It's just gonna be like hard as a rock, but it means it's gonna be a lot harder to make. So if you're new to this type of bag, I would suggest try it with vinyl like this, so you know it's gonna turn out great and it's still really usable. And if you're like, okay, I feel really confident with that, then make another bag and add the stabilizer, make it thicker. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Like I said, any other patterns you wanna see from Fierce Kitten, just leave it down in the comments below. Okay guys, let's get started. So for this bag, you're gonna need a 1/2 yard of exterior material and a 1/2 yard of lining material. For my exterior material, I'm gonna be using this light to medium weight, kind of a matte black vinyl, which is so cool on this bag. But for a little pop of contrast, I'm gonna use this lightweight. Now this is a lightweight vinyl. It's like a foil pink vinyl. You see it has like orange and yellow iridescent to it. This is going to be perfect for that front pocket. Now I will say that front pocket is not challenging at all. I do want to try this bag again using a thicker vinyl for it, but if you're new to this type of design, using a more lightweight material for the front pocket is going to be really, really helpful. Then for the lining material, I'm using a water-resistant canvas. This is custom printed for the box this month. It's so cute, but the water-resistant canvas has its own structure to it, so this is going to help keep the bag's shape as well as the outer material. I did want to note that I'm not using any stabilizer or interfacing today. If you're using any sort of a quilt weight cotton, a lightweight frayable material, you're going to need to add woven interfacing to that. If you're using thicker material, make sure you think about that when it comes to the pocket and everything. I do like to add a little bit of reinforcement in one place, and I'm actually going to use this remnants from this black vinyl for that. I'm going to show you how I do that once we get to that step. But sometimes if you need to add a little bit of firmer stabilizer somewhere and you don't have any, you can always use vinyl. As long as it's not something you see, you can use that. So here's our hardware for today. First, we have a nice long piece of zipper tape. I'm going to be doing 2 zippers. I'm going to do the main zipper on the outside of the bag, and then I'm going to do the smaller zipper on the 3D pocket. If you wanted to do another pocket in the lining, you could. So I'm going to use 1 zipper pull for the 3D pocket and then 2 zipper pulls for the main pocket. However, if you have this kit and you're like, I really want to do that zipper accent pocket on the interior of the bag as well, you could use just 1 of these zipper pulls for the main zipper. And then if you have your own zipper tape, you can use the other zipper pull. So there is lots of options with this bag. There are no lining pockets in the pattern, but you can add a slip pocket, a zipper pocket. You can add all kinds of stuff. Honestly, I want to add like a little ID pocket at some point. I think that'd be really cute. And then for webbing, the pattern says 40 inches of webbing. You actually need twice that. So for the kit this month, if you have that, or if you just want to have a fun design like we're doing, we're going to use this black webbing for the bottom part of the strap, but then I'm going to use a colorful bright webbing for the top part of the strap. And if you are doing the bag making bee box, this color is going to differ box by box. So it's kind of a mystery color. So I have this really fun like lime and black webbing that I'll be using. Then we have our awesome custom bag tag from the Heartwood and Hide, which is so stinking cute. I'm gonna put that on the back panel this month so it really shows it off with the bag straps. And then I have my own metal bag tag as always. I have 2 1-inch strap sliders, 2 1-inch rectangle rings, and then a handful of rivets. I'm actually just going to be using about 4 rivets today, but you can add them in various places. I'll try to let you know where you can do that. And then we have about 3 yards of 1-inch wide fold over elastic. This is going to be really easy to use with binding those curves on the inside of the bag. Okay, here's all the other stuff, all my tools and things. So of course I have my rivet press and a hole punch. Rivet press is, in my opinion, an essential item that you have in your bag making room. Rivets are so much easier to use than sewing sometimes, so that's why I suggest it. I have a whole video, I'll link it. For the top thread, I'm going to be using a Tex 45 weight thread. This is from Wizardry Stitchery in color Fairy Floss. For my bobbin, I will be using a Gutermann Mara 100 weight thread. Both of these are polyester. I suggest always using polyester thread with bags, not cotton thread. It breaks too easily. It wears down. And then I have my needle of choice, which is a Microtex 8012 needle. I have a little bit of Beacon 3-in-1 glue. Really, this is just for my metal bag tag. If you don't have one of those, you really don't need the glue. I have a few different marking tools, a silver ink pen. This is really helpful on that black vinyl. And then I have this chalk pencil, which I've been using nonstop. I love this. It has 3 different colors of lead in it, and it makes it, it's just so easy to use. And then an air erasing marker, as always, a lighter to clean up the loose threads, a turning tool, a seam ripper, 1" by 6" ruler. You might find an X-Acto knife helpful. I actually did not use this at all in this pattern, but I just wanted to suggest it in case you wanted to use it to cut out the inner circle. I'll show you that in just a minute. And then I have 2 sets of double-sided tape. One is 1/8 of an inch wide, and the other one is 1/4 of an inch wide. So now let's go through our pattern pieces. And the first thing I want to point out is how much I love these pattern pieces. It is so clever. They have little check boxes on them for like how much you need of your exterior lining if you're using interfacing, what else you might need to go with it, placement for the different pockets and things like that. It is so handy to just have it all on the pattern piece. I think this is brilliant. So I'll be doing the 3D pocket, which means I cut out this inner bit circle, not circle, but you know, this shape. I cut out this inner shape already. And so I've done that with my exterior as well. So you only do it on the exterior, you don't do it on the lining, and it's only if you're doing the 3D pocket, which I suggest you give a try. So I've got this inner bit cut out using the template. You also are going to want to mark all of this. You're going to want to mark your midpoints on the top and the bottom, and you're going to want to mark where your gusset seams are. I suggest doing that ahead of time so you don't have to worry about it later. I have not done it yet. I'll probably be doing this as I go through the pattern. And then you're going to have 1 cut of lining, and the lining will not have the hole cut out. The lining is just on its own, just like this. Next up, we have pattern piece B. You're going to have 1 cut of your exterior and 1 cut of your lining. Then we have pattern piece C, which is going to be your gusset. You're going to have 2 cuts of exterior and then 2 cuts of lining for this. We do have a seam on the bottom that connects them. These are not rectangles. These are, what do we call them, like a trapezoid, parallelogram, I don't remember. But they're wider on the bottom than they are on the top. So just make sure you note that if you decide to use a ruler, these are not rectangles. Then we have pattern pieces D and E, and you guys, this is so cool to me. I love this bag because the back panel is bigger and taller than the front panel, so you gotta be clever with your gussets here. These are not rectangles. So pattern piece D is going to be the zipper back, meaning this is gonna go behind the zipper. This is the back side of the zipper when you're looking at the front of the bag. You're gonna have 1 cut of your exterior and 1 cut of your lining. Go ahead and mark the midpoints on this one as well. And then pattern piece E, same thing. You're gonna have 1 cut of exterior, 1 cut of lining. Mark those midpoints. This is gonna go on the zipper front. So this is going to attach to the front panel. This back one is going to attach to the back panel. Okay, then you have pattern piece F. These are going to be the strap connectors. These are going to be folded over and they go on the bottom of the bag to hold the backpack strap. This is a very lightweight vinyl, and so to give it a little bit of extra oomph, a little bit of extra protection, you want to put a triangle cut of stabilizer. Since I'm not using stabilizer, I just cut a 2" by 2" square. So this is what I cut, a little 2" by 2" square of my black vinyl. And then I cut diagonally to create 2 triangles. And what I'll do is just kind of put that in there, wrap it around, and now I have some extra stability. So this is a trick you can use anywhere. You can always use scraps of your material as stabilizer in certain parts. I mean, you could even use it for the main part if you wanted a lot of stabilizer. I wouldn't suggest it for like the main panels, but for little bits like this, that's an easy fix. You don't need to go buy Decovil Heavy or Light or anything like that. Then we have a rectangle cut for the vinyl strap covers. This is gonna be that beautiful little accent on the back of the bag that hides the straps. They tuck into it, it's really cute. And then you have another rectangle cut that's going to be for the hook. This is the little loop that goes on the top of the bag so you can hang it wherever you want. Okay, here are all the pieces for that 3D pocket. Now remember, there are 3 different pocket options for the front panel. I would say this is probably considered the most challenging one, which is why I think you should do it, because it's not as hard as you think it is. It comes together really well, especially if you use this type of material. So first we have pattern piece H. This is going to be the actual pocket. So you're gonna have 1 cut of your exterior material, and then you have 2 cuts of lining here. Then we have pattern piece I, and this is going to be the bottom gusset. So you have 1 cut of exterior, 1 cut of lining. And then pattern piece J, which is going to be the top of the pocket. This is going to connect to the zipper. And you have 1 cut of exterior, 1 cut of lining. Okay, the first step of this pattern is to transfer all the markings, and I suggest you do that. I'm obviously not going to show you how to do it because it's going to take me a while. But all midpoints, mark them. Any place where there's like right here on this 3D pocket, it has zipper gusset seam, top and bottom midpoints, mark them. If you mark them all now, it's gonna make it a lot simpler later, so just take the time to mark all your midpoints and gusset markings. So let's get started on this 3D pocket. You're gonna need the 3D pocket exterior piece and one of the lining pieces. Save the second lining piece for later. If you want to put a tag on your pocket, go ahead and do that now. So if you have a bag tag or any decorations, or maybe like an embroidery or a heat transfer vinyl, any sort of design, put it on the pocket now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our two pockets and we're going to lay them wrong sides together and line up all the edges. Grab some clips and clip this unit wrong sides together. Now take this to the sewing machine and you're going to just baste around the entire edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now grab your 3D pocket zipper and your two J cuts, so the exterior and the lining. And I'm gonna go ahead and just add my zipper now. You can add it a little bit later. I will be honest, the first time I made this bag, I actually pretty much completed the entire front pocket, and the entire time I did not have the zipper pull on it. I completely forgot to add it. So I'm just gonna add it now so I don't do that again. And anytime I work with zipper tape, after I add the pull, I like to melt down the short edges because they do like to fray. Now, since my zipper is a little bit longer than my main cuts, I am gonna find the midpoint on it by just folding it in half. Don't cut the midpoint. Sometimes we make little triangle cuts. Don't do that. Just grab a marking tool that you can see and just right on the edge, not too far because you don't want to see it in the end, just right on the edge of that zipper tape, just make a little mark so you know where the midpoint is. And you should already have the midpoints marked on your two J cuts. Now make sure the zipper when closing goes towards the left and lay the zipper right side up. I'm going to use double-sided tape for this because this is just a method I've been enjoying lately. So I'm going to grab my 1/8 of an inch wide double-sided tape and I'm going to add it right on the top edge of my zipper tape all the way down. And I can just take the paper off of the tape. I'm going to grab my exterior cut for the zipper and I'm going to lay it right side down, right sides together with my zipper tape, matching up the midpoints first and then matching it up along the top edge. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my lining cut and I'm going to add a piece of double-sided tape right along the top of my lining cut. And this is going to be along the long edge that's going to go against the zipper. So if you have pattern placement preferences, this edge is going to be the edge that's against the zipper. So now I'll flip my zipper right side down, wrong side up, so I'm looking at the back of it, and then I'm going to remove the paper from my double-sided tape. And I'll just lay this down, right side down on the back of the zipper, matching up the midpoints first and just taping it to the top edge. And so when you look at the top, the exterior and the lining should start and stop in the same spot. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm just going to stitch along the edge where all my tape is at 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I should not be sewing over the tape at all. And make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end, and this is just sandwiching the zipper between the exterior and the lining. Once you have that sewn, go ahead and finger press the exterior and the lining materials away from the zipper. So the exterior and the lining should be wrong sides together now. I'm going to use those midpoint marks to line up those two panels and clip them wrong sides together. I'm going to do this for the entire rectangle. Just getting it as flat as possible. If you're using material you can iron, you're more than welcome to take this to the iron and flatten it out that way. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch by the zipper at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I'm just going to go ahead and baste around the 3 raw edges, also at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, to just hold it flat. So now grab both pattern piece eyes, the exterior and the lining. And what we want to do is we want to add this to our zipper, but we're not going to add it along the long edges. We're only adding it along the short edges. So you can see my zipper is longer than my panel. I'm going to trim this down just to make it easier. So I'm going to trim my zipper down so it's the same length as that top panel there. And once again, every time you cut zipper tape, just give it a little melt. So with the zipper and the exterior attached right side up, grab your exterior piece I and you're going to lay it right side down. So right sides together with the zipper, and you're going to line up the short edge of piece I with the side over here of the zipper panel combo. And then just clip these together. If you want to baste these together, you can. I'm not going to. I'm just going to clip them together. And then I'm going to flip this over, and I'm looking at the back side where I see the lining, and I'm going to take my lining piece I and lay this right side down. And I'm going to, once again, line it up with that short edge and add it to my clips. just like this. So now I'm going to just prep the other side the same way. This is light enough material. If you want to sew this first and then do the other side, you can. I'm going to do both at the same time. So I'm going to pull up my exterior, and it is obviously much longer than the top, and I'm going to line it up with the other short edge, right sides together, and clip. And then I'm going to grab the lining and pull that to the lining side of my zipper, or the back side of my zipper, and clip. So this is kind of what you should have, where it's like all bubbled in the middle, but the short edges are matched up. And now we're going to sew along each of these short edges at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and the end. Now you're going to flip this so it's exterior right side out, and then the exterior and the lining panels for those piece eyes are now wrong sides together, and you have a nice little loop. See, this is your gusset for that front pocket. In this method, you're pretty much making 2 gusseted pouches and attaching them together. So I'm going to use the midpoints to line up the bottom of the lining in the exterior. And I'm just going to clip along these 2 long raw edges to hold it all together. And just make sure you straighten it out as you go. Sometimes it can feel like the lining is too long. It's not too long, it's just curved. Once you flatten it out, you'll see it fits perfectly. And then over here where the seams are between the bottom of the gusset and the top of the gusset, just make sure it's nice and flat. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch along the 2 seams and also the 2 long raw edges, all at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I suggest starting on one of the long edges and just working your way around. If you ever notice that your material on your gusset is shifting, your extra material is kind of stretching or shifting while you're trying to baste along the edge, just flip it over and baste from the lining side. I find that works much easier. So now flip your gusset so it's lining side out, exterior side on the inside. And then grab your front panel for your pocket and lay it right side up. And the zipper side is the side we want to attach to the front pocket. So zipper is going to face right side down. Line up the midpoint mark on the zipper with that top midpoint mark on the top curve of your pocket and clip right sides together. And then find the midpoint mark on the bottom of your zipper gusset and line that exterior right sides together with the bottom midpoint mark on the front panel of your 3D pocket. And then remember, on the sides of the 3D pocket, you marked gusset placements, and that's going to be where the zipper and the bottom gusset connect. Right at that seam, line it up with those marks and clip together. Now these are a bit of sharp curves. However, our material is lightweight enough where I find it's not that big of an issue. If you've seen in some of my previous videos, we've done some hand basting when we have to attach a zipper to a curve. If you want to do that for the top bit here, you definitely can. However, I didn't find it necessary. I was totally fine just pulling the zipper up to wrap around the material. So just match it up and clip together. And the pattern suggests too that if you would prefer, you can use staples here to hold it together, because sometimes the clips do just pop off. I just stick with clips. But you have a few different options here. You can clip, you can staple, you can hand baste. Hand basting is very quick. I would say hand basting is probably just as quick as stapling. All right, there we go. There's that. And then we have to do the bottom as well. So I'm going to do the straight edges first. And then for these bottom corners, you can grab your scissors and just cut, I would say no more than 3. You can cut just like 3 small snips into the seam, no further than your basting stitch, to help it spread around that corner. And just wrap it around the corner of the front part of the pocket and clip together. This is not a difficult corner at all, so you should not be struggling if you're using a lightweight material like I am. If you're using really thick material or stiff material, this could be a little bit more challenging. So now we want to sew this gusset onto that front little panel. It's going to be so cute. We want to sew it on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You're going to want to use a zipper foot and a stiletto for this. I'm going to sew it with the gusset lining side up, main panel lining side down. Go slow. If you find that on the bottom corners you really need the gusset to stretch more, you can clip into the gusset with your scissors, just a small amount, no more than 1/8 of an inch. However, on the top corners, do not clip into your zipper tape. Your zipper tape will start to fray. It won't last very long. So you really just have to carefully work your way around the top corners with the zipper. Okay, I know I speed that up for the sake of the video, but I will tell you it took me 4 minutes to stitch that. That's how slow I go. I mean, it's just tiny stitch by tiny stitch. So what you want to do now is you want to zip it all the way up, and then you want to turn it right side out and see how it looks. Make sure that the corners look the way you want them to look. Make sure that you didn't miss anything. Oh yeah, that looks cute. And this vinyl is just perfect for it because it's not so stiff, so it really smooths out nicely. Isn't that beautiful? It looks soft, doesn't it? It is soft too. This vinyl's really soft. So pretty. Okay, now you might want to add a couple little clips into the seam on the bottom corners. And so you've already clipped into the gusset, but this will allow the main panel to kind of fold over itself to create smoother curves. You don't need to clip into anything around the zipper. The zipper's fine. So now we're gonna grab some of our binding and we're just gonna wrap this around the seam. So I'm just going to, I like to have it with the side I'm not gonna see facing up. So for me, whenever I sew this, the back of the main panel is gonna be down against the bottom of the sewing machine. So that's where I like to look when I'm wrapping this, because then I can make sure it's covering the stitches. Because the side that I'm looking at, I'll have more control over, but I won't know if I'm catching the back. So as long as I know that it's wrapped around the seam entirely on the back side, then I know that I'm good on the front side. So with the elastic binding, it's nice because you can just kind of stretch it around these corners and it's just perfect. You don't have any pleating. I just love it. It's the best stuff ever. Now when I get up to the zipper, you don't want the binding to be too close to your teeth. So as you go around here, you might want to switch this over. It's okay if the binding folds a little bit further on the back side so that it's not right against the zipper teeth, because if it's too close to the zipper teeth, your zipper is going to get stuck on it. So I'm just going to stretch this around the curves, and this might be easier if you open up your zipper. And I just want to make sure I'm covering the stitching, but I'm not too close to the zipper teeth. Okay, once you get back to where you started, I like to have it overlap by about 3/4 of an inch. I don't measure it, just enough. You don't want it to be too far away. And then we just wrap the end of the binding around where we started. I don't finish it off or anything. With this type of binding, it's totally fine. It's not going to fray or anything like that. So now I'm going to flip this so it's gusset lining side up, and I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch this on at a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. I don't want to go past the stitches that I've already made because I don't want to reshape the bag. I just want to cover it. So even going a little bit less than the 1/4 inch seam allowance, the ends of the binding will still cover that stitching. Okay, so doesn't that binding look so nice around there? So once you're all done with that, pop it so it's exterior right side out. Just take a look, make sure it all still looks good. Practice opening and closing your zipper. I find that it doesn't get hung up on that seam at all. So I don't know, this pocket just turns out so nice. So now grab your piece A, and you should have the inner circle cut out. If you haven't, go ahead and cut that out. You might want to use an X-Acto knife. I find scissors are fine. And then we're going to line up our template over this, making sure you're lining up all of the marks, the midpoint marks on the top and the bottom, the gusset seams on the side. You just want to get this as close to how it's supposed to be as possible. And then what we want to do is we want to make 4 marks with top, bottom, and gusset marks. They're on the pattern piece. So what I'm going to do is just lift up the pattern right along the edge on the top and the bottom and mark right by that cutout. I'm going to lift it up on the sides for the gusset seams. Okay, so when I take it away, you see I have 4 marks around this pocket. So now when you look at your 3D pocket, you should have a midpoint mark on the top along the edge of the material, on the bottom, and then you have your 2 side gussets. And what you're going to do is you're pretty much just going to plop this in right side up just like that. So when we have both exteriors right side up, this is how it looks. Isn't that so cute? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this top part of my piece A down. So I'm looking at the raw edge here, and I'm going to find that midpoint mark on the top of that inner cutout, and I'm going to line that up right sides together with the midpoint mark on my little front pocket. I kind of think of this as like a skirt. That's what the front panel is becoming. So if I keep the A panel wrong side up, you see I just wrap it around that front pocket, and it's like a little skirt that goes around that 3D pocket. So I'm going to line up the bottom midpoint marks, clip right sides together. This is what I think is so brilliant, because I've done pockets like this on other bags, and it was much more challenging, and it was not done like this. This is so smart to cut this out like this. So then over here on the side, we're going to find the gusset mark, and we're going to line that up with the seam of the gusset where it separates the bottom of the gusset from the zipper, and clip those together. Do the same thing on the other side, and then just continue clipping around the edges. Now, even though these are curved edges, I find I don't have to clip or like cut into anything. Everything stretches really nicely. Okay, so this is what it looks like from the back. So when we sew this, we're going to sew it exterior facing right side up, and you're gonna pull everything away from the seam. So it's a little challenging. You might wanna open up your zipper so you can really maneuver everything around, but we're gonna push everything down and we're going to sew it with the back side of the A panel facing up. And we're just gonna go around the entire clipped edge, sewing this on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and the end, use a stiletto and take your time. Okay, that part can be a little tricky. Again, I was going very slow. It took me 4 minutes to do it. So that's my #1 tip with all these things is take your time. So let's poke this out to see how it looks. Because you might feel like, oh, I don't know, it's gonna look funny. It's good, it's good. I know it kind of seemed like it was difficult to keep that A panel flat, but it actually works out really well. Look how stinking pretty this is. Isn't that so cute? I just love this pocket. So now grab your remaining lining cut piece H and lay your front panel pocket wrong side up. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna just lay this over that opening and you're going to line it up right sides together with the gusset, matching up midpoint marks and gusset marks, and just clip this together. So you're clipping it lining sides, right sides together, the main panel H with the gusset. And you're just, again, keeping that little skirt out of the way. And clip around the entire edge. This should not be very difficult. So after you have the lining clipped, flip this so that that A panel, once again, is wrong side up, and the back of your lining is going to be down against the bottom of your sewing machine on the bed. And you're just going to stitch this down at about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. No more than 1/4. Anywhere between 1/8 of an inch and a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just sew the lining into place. Okay, so after you get that lining attached, just make sure to check that you got all the edges. The nice thing about that lining is that if it's not perfectly straight, if it's kind of uneven, that's fine. You just want to catch it. So that way when you open your zipper on the front here, you see you have a nice little fully lined pocket. How cute is that? Okay, now the next step is pretty important, and you need to make sure you're careful with this. We want to top stitch along this seam to hold this pocket's shape. And when you do this, you actually want to press the seam on the back here behind the pocket. So it's going to go behind the gusset. I know you want to press it behind the main panel. I do too. And then you want to top stitch it there, but it won't look right. So you're going to take it and you're going to press the seam behind your gusset, which can get a little thick right here depending on your material where the top and the bottom of the gusset meet. Just go slowly. I like to use a zipper foot, and honestly, I'm top stitching at about 1/16 of an inch. I mean, less than 1/8 of an inch. I highly suggest you match your thread color to your material on this gusset. You won't ever even see it. All right, so you see when you top stitch that, it just creates this perfect like push so that the pocket always has like the shape that you want. It's just so stinking cute. I love this. I love this pocket so much. Okay, so now I'm gonna attach my metal bag tag, and I just kind of eyeball this. Let's see how far I want it to go down. I want it to be like right about there. It's gonna be about 1 3/4 of an inch down. So that's what I'm going to do to put it my bag tag. So I just measured down 1 3/4 of an inch and made a midpoint dot, and then I used my washer to mark placement for my prongs. I'm also just gonna grab a scrap of my vinyl as a bit of stabilizer, and I'm gonna mark those same spots for the prongs. And I'm gonna grab my seam ripper, and I'm going to very, very, very carefully rip along those prong marks. Very carefully. And it's always better if they're a little on the small side. It's better that they're too small rather than too big. I'm gonna do the same thing with the scrap. I don't have to be as careful with the scrap, but the thing with the seam ripper is if you push too hard, you're gonna rip all the way to the top of your material. And that would be so sad after all the work you've done. I'm gonna insert this in here and just take a look. There we go. The hardest thing for me is getting it straight. It always looks straight, and then in the end, there we go. That looks good. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so once I'm happy with that, I'm going to flip my metal bag tag over. And if you had a metal bag tag, it doesn't have to be your name or if a business or anything like that. It could just be one that says handmade, or there's some that are like hearts and stars and stuff. I know for a bee box, we've had bees, which are really cute. I just like metal bag tags. They look very fancy. I mean, it really looks fancy. So I'm just going to insert this with that glue on the back of it very carefully. I don't want that glue spreading around. Push it in, get it straight, flip this over. I'm gonna put my scrap of vinyl or your stabilizer over those prongs, and then add your washer. Fold down the prongs. Let's look at it from the front again. Make sure it looks the way we want. There we go. Flip it back over. I have just this like skinny duct tape. Just gonna grab a small cut and cover the metal bit so it doesn't ruin my lining. Okay, so now we have our bag tag installed. So now grab your lining cut for this main panel, and you're going to take the exterior and lining panels wrong sides together and line up all the edges and clip these two panels together. You might find if you did this 3D pocket on the front that you kind of have to stretch it a bit. It does, when you sew things on like this, it does kind of shrink the material. Just do your best to get everything lined up. You should be able to stretch it just fine. All right, once you have the panels clipped together, we're gonna take this to a sewing machine and we're going to baste around the entire clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance to hold it all together. All right, your front panel is all done and it's adorable. You can set this to the side now. So now let's work on the back panel. So grab your vinyl strap cover and on the back side, mark a midpoint line going along the edge. I would suggest an air erasing or like a very light colored pencil if you're using this more lightweight material, because this lightweight material is see-through. So if you had like the blue water erasing marker, it's gonna show up in the end and it's not gonna go away. So think about that ahead of time. So I'm gonna grab my double-sided tape and I'm just gonna lay it right over that marked line. And then I can remove the paper from this. And I'm just gonna take each long raw edge and fold it back, wrong sides together, to meet that midpoint line and attach to the tape. If you need to use clips to help hold this in place, you can do that. This material is light enough that I think I'll be okay. Okay, give it a good press to get it nice and flat. Now, if you have a directional print, decide which is going to be the top, which is going to be the bottom, and with this wrong side up, focusing on the bottom edge, I'm gonna grab another piece of double-sided tape, and I'm going to pretty much just put this right in the middle between the raw edge and the folded edge, because I don't really want to stitch over this, and I think you want to keep it over 1/8 of an inch away from the bottom folded edge. So now grab your back main panel, the exterior, and you should have placement marked on the top for your vinyl strap cover. Now there's 2 marks you can make. I just marked the bottom of it, that's it. And what you're gonna do is you're just gonna take this piece of vinyl and you're gonna lay it right side up, back side down, line up the bottom edge of your vinyl with those 2 marks, and we're just gonna top stitch this on. So first let's use our tape to help with this. I'm just gonna remove the paper. And like I said, we just go from one mark to the other, taping this down just like that and flatten it out. And now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and top stitch along the bottom edge only at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you have that top stitch, just set it to the side for a moment. And now grab your little mini strap hook, and on the wrong side of this piece of vinyl, you're going to mark a midpoint just like we did previously. And now I'm not gonna use tape for this because what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold these raw edges back to meet that midpoint line. And I'm gonna use clips here to hold it in place. Do this for both long edges of your little hook. And then once you have both edges folded, you're gonna fold the whole thing in half again so that those raw edges are tucked inside the fold. And just use your clips to clip these together. Now we're gonna go to the sewing machine, and on the edge that has the clips, which is the edge that has the double folds, we're going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, once you have this top stitch, what you wanna do is you wanna bring both of the short edges together. And now we're not gonna fold them like this, like the whole thing in half. You're gonna bring them so that they're both facing right side up, so top stitching edge up, and one is just gonna cross over the other just like that. So you see how it kind of poofs up and it stays flat? That's how we want it. And what I'm gonna do real quick is just take this to the sewing machine and baste along the bottom edge here to hold this together just like this. So now on my little fold over here, I am going to mark about 1/2 inch up from the bottom. It doesn't have to be exact, just about 1/2 inch. There we go. And I made a little mark with my vinyl tool. And then on the back side of this little hook, I'm gonna add a piece of double-sided tape. Just a teeny tiny piece. There we go. And then over here on my back panel, I marked the midpoint on my back panel that's right next to my vinyl strap cover. And I'm gonna take the tape off the back of my little hook, and I'm gonna have this right side up, and I'm gonna use that midpoint mark and that 1/2 inch mark to just kind of slide this in. Now it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want it centered, and you want the edge to come down by about 1/2 of an inch. There we go. Now I'm gonna grab my accent webbing, and I'm gonna cut each one of these to 18 inches long. And here's the thing, 18 inches long webbing on the top, 20-inch long webbing on the bottom. You can mix that around. If you want to use a long webbing on the top, you can. You can kind of adjust as much as you need to. I'll tell you, on the first bag, I used 18 inches on the top and 18 inches on the bottom, and the bag is still a little long in the straps for me. So you have a lot of wiggle room here. But with webbing, just like with zipper tape, I always like to melt the ends because they do fray. Okay, and now what we're gonna do is we're pretty much just going to lift up this vinyl cover and insert our webbing just next to the hook like this. I mean, honestly, we're just eyeballing it, just like that. Now, it says to not have it go down for more than 1 inch. If you want to add rivets to this, which you can definitely do, I would suggest kind of having it go down as far as you can, because you're gonna want some space to put those. So I think I'll do that this time. I didn't do rivets last time, but I think I'll do them this time. Just to help out with this, I am still gonna add some double-sided tape to the bottom back of each of my top straps, just right along the edge. Okay, so when I take the paper off the back of my webbing, and then I'm going to insert this in, and honestly, it's about a 1/4 inch from the side of the pinched hook. A little hook there. There we go. And going straight up. I'm not doing it at an angle or anything, just straight up, just like that. Now I'm going to repeat on the other side. Just I'm going to the left, about a 1/4 inch away from that center hook. And just lift up your vinyl cover and make sure it looks right. There we go. And then lay it back down. If you want to add some double-sided tape to the top of your vinyl cover to really hold this in place, you can. I think I'm just going to use clips. Those seem to work fine. But you want to be careful if you're transferring this from your sewing table to this sewing machine. And now what we want to do is we want to go to the sewing machine and we want to top stitch at 1/8 inch seam allowance, and then do a second row of top stitching at 1/4 inch seam allowance to hold this top cover in place. Okay, so after you have the top stitching is durable enough, but I am trying to decide if I want to add rivets to this or not. I think I'm actually going to not do the rivets. I think I'll be okay without the rivets. Set this to the side for just a moment. Okay, so now I have my 2 F cuts, and I'm going to lay them wrong side up. And on the back side of each one of these, I drew a horizontal line going along the long edge of the triangle at a 3/8 inch above the line that goes right against the top of the cutout triangle. And then I drew vertical lines going from tip to tip. So tip of the outer top triangle, tip of the inner cutout triangle. And then I have my 2 cuts of scraps here, or stabilizer, whatever's easiest. I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the back of these. You don't have to add a lot, just enough to hold it in place for a moment. When we sew it, it will do most of the work. So I'm going to line up the bottom of the triangle with that drawn line, and then the side of the triangle with the midpoint line, just like that. On the other one, I'm going to do the same thing, but on the right side of the triangle. So you see it's like they're reflected. There we go. So I have those 2 pieces just like that. I'm going to grab some double-sided tape, and I'm going to add double-sided tape right along the very bottom edge of the long side of our triangle. I'll do this for both of them, and I do have the tape just kind of like going over that gap. I think that'll be fine. You can cut it down if you prefer. You don't have to have the tape just floating, but I'm just going to leave it. And then we're going to remove the paper from the tape, and now we're going to fold that bottom edge up pretty much on that marked line. So it's going to fold around the stabilizer cut and then just fold right on that line. So do this for both of your little triangles. Now you're going to grab your 2 20-inch long pieces of webbing, and these are the bottom webbing pieces. And if you haven't already, grab a lighter and melt down the short edges so that they don't have to deal with fraying. And then I'm going to add a little piece of double-sided tape, once again, just to the back of one short end on each one of these straps. And then on the right side of that same edge where the tape is, I'm going to use a ruler, and I'm just going to mark 1 inch from the edge. I have just a little chalk pencil here just so I can line this up. So I'm going to grab one of my little strap connectors. I'm going to take the paper off the back of my webbing, and then on the side that has the stabilizer, I'm just going to lay my webbing sticky side down and match up the bottom edge of the strap connector with that 1 inch mark on my webbing. There we go. And then all I have to do is fold over that strap connector, and I have another nice little triangle that's wrapped around my webbing. Isn't that cute? I like it. That's adorable. So now I'm just going to clip around all the edges to hold this together. There we go. So there's one strap with strap connector. Now we're gonna do the same thing with the other one. Take the paper off the back of your webbing, off that tape, lay it on the side that has the stabilizer, match up the 1-inch mark on your webbing with the bottom of the strap connector, and then just hug that triangle around the webbing, lining up all the sides of your triangle, and use clips to hold in place. Now think about how this is going to be in the end. When we attach this, we're going to attach it like this. I like the side that has the stabilizer, and you can see it because there's a triangle here. I like that stabilizer side to go against the back panel. So my triangles are going to be attached just like this. See? So this is what I consider the right side. So I'm going to take each one of these to the sewing machine now, not with the back panel, but we're going to top stitch along the folded edges of our triangle. Once at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then again at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you can also baste along the raw edges to hold it in place. Just do this from the top side on each one of these connectors. Okay, this is how your little straps should look. So now with the top stitched side facing up, you're going to take your strap connector and you're going to match up the raw edge with the side of your back panel. The bottom of your triangle is going to match up with that strap connector mark that we marked in the beginning. And it almost goes all the way up to where the side gusset is. So here's the mark up here right above it for the gusset. When we attach that in the end, it almost reaches that. And the triangle should be folded in towards the center of the bag, the strap going diagonally across. So I'm gonna move the strap out of the way. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. I like to do them both at the same time so I know that it looks correct, and they both have top stitching side up. So now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine. I'm gonna baste these two strap connectors down at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once that's done, you can trim off any overhang you have from your connectors or from the top piece here. I find it's easier to look from the back side and trim it down. Okay, now I'm gonna move everything out of the way, and the last thing I wanna do on this back panel is attach my adorable tag. So I have my custom bag tag, and I have a little piece of double-sided tape. I'm just gonna add that to the back of my tag, and then I'll remove the paper. And I'm just gonna eyeball this. I'm just gonna center it right underneath that hook. Oh, isn't that cute? And it blends in with the bag really nice, so it's like the image just pops out. It's so pretty. So I'm gonna top stitch this down at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you really wanna keep it hidden, then use a black thread here. I'm not gonna do that, but it will look cool. So cute, right? Okay, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, all these webbings, this is gonna be so hard. So what we wanna do is we wanna grab all 4 of our webbings and we wanna just organize them. So I'm going to straighten them all out and then just carefully pull them all together without pulling my bag too much. And I'm just gonna kind of fold them in like this. You will still have to be careful, but you can kind of roll them up. There we go. Again, make sure you're not pulling the bag in any way. So I'm just gonna kind of pinch the webbing like that. And then you can use a rubber band. This is like an electrical cord rubber band thing. I'm just gonna tie it around there. There we go. Just to try to keep them out of the way. Okay, make sure you pull down your little hook. I'm just gonna tuck it under there. And what we wanna do now is we wanna attach the lining to this back panel. Now, if you wanted to add a pocket to the lining, you definitely could. It'd be very easy to add a slip pocket. If you have the box for this month, you have plenty of material to do a little slip pocket with a little hot pink vinyl accent on the top. You could do a zipper pocket. There's lots of things you can do, but I'm just gonna leave it. So I'm gonna take my lining and lay it wrong side up. My exterior is right side up. I'm just going to lay them wrong sides together and line up all of the edges and clip together. And once you have it all clipped together, I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine and I'm just gonna baste along the entire clipped edge at about an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You could do a 1/4 inch if you'd like. Once again, I'm gonna do it with the lining side up, even though it is a little bit tricky because those webbing pieces are in the way. It's just easier for me to attach it with the lining. All right, once you have the lining basted onto the back panel, you can set this to the side. So now add your zipper pulls to your long zipper tape. And when you add them, make sure you add one from one end and one from the other. So when they close, they come together to close, just like that. And as always, let's melt down those crazy edges. So now we're gonna build this zipper gusset, and this is how it's gonna look. One side goes on the top, one side goes on the bottom. You'll notice that these pattern pieces, D and E, they have a round side and then they have a straight side. So the straight side is what we sew to the zipper tape. This makes it much easier. So straight edges go against the zipper tape, rounded edges do not. So let's start with pattern piece D, and you have your lining and your exterior. And to make it a little easier for me, I'm going to use the 1/8 of an inch wide double-sided tape, and I'm just going to add it right along the straight edge on both the exterior and the lining panels. So you should have midpoints marked on both of those straight edges on those panels, but let's mark the midpoint on our zipper as well. So I'm just going to fold this in half. As always, when we mark midpoints on zippers, we use some sort of a pen. We don't use scissors. So I'm going to mark right on the edge. It doesn't have to be super noticeable, just noticeable enough to work with. And I'm also going to transfer that mark to the back of the zipper tape as well. Just again, right on the edge. I need to be able to see it on both sides. All right, so I have my zipper right side up. I'm going to grab my piece D, exterior, and I'm going to remove the paper from the double-sided tape. And I'm going to lay it exterior right side down, right sides together with the zipper, line up the midpoint marks first, and then smooth out along the edge of that zipper. All right, once I have that attached, I'm going to flip this over so I'm looking at the back side of the zipper tape, and then I'm going to grab my lining piece, and I'm going to remove the paper off of that double-sided tape, and I'm going to lay my lining right side down to the back side of the zipper, matching up midpoints and taping it to the long edge. This is the same long edge that we taped the exterior to. All right, once I have both of these taped in place, I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew along this long edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitching at the beginning and the end. Use a zipper foot. Make sure you move your zippers out of the way as you go past them. All right, once those are sewn on, we're going to press both the exterior and the lining away from the zipper tape. So if you want to use an iron for this, if you have ironable material, you can. I'm just going to use my fingers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the midpoints on the curved side of each of these panels to pull them wrong sides together, and then just clip them along all their edges. So corners, straight and curved edges. So now take your time to flatten this out by the zipper really well. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch along the edge with the zipper at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to start on one of these short sides and top stitch up the side, top stitch along the zipper, top stitch down the other side, and then I'm going to base the curved edge. But when I do that, I'm going to flip over my panel so I have it lining side up, and I'm going to base at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. That way it's just easier for me. All right, so now we have that attached. We're going to repeat that with the other panels. So now you're going to grab your 2 E panels, your exterior and your lining. Once again, make sure you have midpoints marked everywhere. And on the straight edges of each of these panels, so the top straight edges, I'm once again going to add my 1/8 of an inch wide double-sided tape. And then I'm going to take my zipper right side up, remove the paper off of the tape on the exterior panel, and then flip my exterior panel right side down, match up the midpoint mark with the exterior and the zipper, and tape this in place. Okay, once you have the exterior tape down, flip this over so you're looking at the back of the zipper, and then grab your lining piece and remove the paper from that tape, and lay this right side down along the same edge, matching up midpoints and taping to the zipper. All right, now with it taped in place and all straight, I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and sew along this edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end using a zipper foot. Once that's stitched, press the exterior panel away from the zipper, flip this over and press the lining panel away from the zipper. Use the midpoint marks on the curved edges to pull these 2 panels wrong sides together and clip along those raw edges. So flatten it out really nicely, and then just like before, I'm going to top stitch along the sides and the folded edge by the zipper at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to baste along the curved edge, also at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and there you go. That's your top gusset. Isn't that so cool? Because like the one side is shorter than the other, I think. I just think it's really, really cool. It's a really cool way to make a bag. So set this to the side for a minute. So now grab pieces C, and this is going to be the gusset for the bottom part of the gusset. So I'm going to grab my 2 exterior pieces, and like I said, remember, these are not squares, rectangles. They look like they're rectangles, but they're not. They're wider on the bottom than they are on the top. So we're going to take our 2 exterior pieces, and we're going to flip them right sides together, looking at the bottom edge, which is the wider edge, and clip these together. So go ahead and do the same thing with your lining panels, just flipping them right sides together and matching up the bottom edges. Now we'll take this to the sewing machine and sew along each of these bottom clipped edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Once you have these sewn, open up your panels and then do your best to press that seam open. And it's a little tricky with the vinyl, but you want to press the bottom seam open on both the exterior and the lining. Now you're going to flip this to the right side, and on the right side, on each one of these, the exterior and the lining, you're going to top stitch at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on each side of that seam. So each one of these 4 panels is going to be top stitch right next to the seam. All right, once you have both the exterior and lining bottom gussets ready to go, we're going to grab our zipper gusset, and let's grab the exterior bottom gusset, lay your zipper right side up, exterior bottom gusset right side down, and match up these 2 short edges. Now, you're gonna notice that it's going to curve, it's not straight, and it might be a little bit more narrow than the bottom gusset. So for me, my zipper gusset part here isn't as wide along the short edge as that bottom gusset. That's okay. I'm just going to center it and clip it together. All right, once I have the exteriors right sides together, then I'm going to grab the lining part of my bottom gusset, and I'm gonna lay my lining right sides together with the back of the zipper gusset, and I'm just going to include this in the clip and just make sure it's corner to corner with the exterior gusset. And I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, so I'm just gonna kind of finagle this. I'm gonna pull my zipper gusset over so its exteriors right sides together. Once again, making sure it's centered, and then clipping right sides together along that short edge. And you see none of this is laying flat. And then I'm gonna fold over the lining bottom gusset and just corner to corner with the exterior gusset, add it to the clips. All right, once you have both these sides clipped, we're going to sew along each one of them at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. If you're using really thick vinyl, I suggest going over it a second time, just outside of that first stitch. All right, once you have those sewn, I do suggest you go over to the corners here and just clip down the corners at a 45-degree angle. This will help prevent bulk once we attach it to the main panels. We're almost there. Now flip this out so you have your lining and exterior bottom gussets wrong sides together and the exterior is facing out. So you just have a nice circle like this. Isn't that pretty? It's so cool. Okay, so now I'm going to match up the seams on the bottom gussets, wrong sides together, and clip along this long edge. And I'm going to just clip this entire gusset together. All right, once you have it all clipped, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start just below this seam between the bottom and the top of the gusset. And I'm gonna top stitch at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, go over that seam, top stitching at an 1/8 of an inch, and then down the other edge a little bit. I'm gonna do this for both sides where the seams are. Once I have the seams top stitched, then I'm gonna flip this so it's exterior inside lining out, and I'm gonna baste along the 2 long edges with the lining facing up at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you're done attaching your gusset, you might notice that the bottom part of your gusset is wider than the top part. I know for me that was the case. You want to smooth this out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my scissors and I'm gonna line it up with the top part of the gusset by the zipper, and I'm just gonna kind of cut at an angle, just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a long cut, just enough to smooth it out. It'll be okay in the end that it's not perfectly lined up, but we don't want that jagged bit there. It's gonna make attaching it to the main panel more difficult. Alrighty, your gusset is all good to go. Let's make this bag. So now your bag should be 3 pieces. You have your gusset, which is the middle, you have your front and your back. So let's start with attaching the gusset to the front panel. So lay your front panel right side up. You can unzip this front pocket if you'd like, just because it might be easier to smush it when we need to. And then we're going to take our gusset. Now, one side has to attach to the front panel and one side has to attach to the back panel. So the more narrow part of the zipper gusset, that goes to the front panel. So flip this so it's lining side out, exterior on the inside. Then take that more narrow top zipper gusset, and you have a midpoint marked on it. Match up that midpoint with the top midpoint mark of your front panel and clip right sides together. Now let's rotate this and let's match up the midpoint on the bottom of your front panel with the seam between the 2 bottom gusset panels. Okay, now once you get to the sides, remember we have a mark on the side of our front panel that's going to match up with the gusset. So that's the seam on the gusset between the zipper and the bottom gusset. So find that seam and match it up with that mark and clip exteriors right sides together. And then do the same thing on the other side. And then I find it easiest if we now flip this so we're looking at the back of the main panel, and we just gently go around the curves and clip these together. If you need to cut into your gusset, which I'm probably going to need to help smooth it out, you can, but for now I'm just gonna kind of flatten it out and clip. And then on these bottom corners, this is very similar to that 3D pocket we did, where the bottom corners are gonna be a little sharp. So just clip along the sides and the bottom until you get to those corners. And then once you're at the corner part, cut into the gusset. Just like between 2 and 4 cuts, not too many. You don't want to spread out too much. And then when you tuck in that corner of your main panel, you can see the gusset is going to spread around that corner. Once you like flatten it out with your fingers, it's going to spread really nicely, which is what we want. So clip those together. Repeat with the other corner. And remember, when you're at the sewing machine, if you need any of the gusset to spread out even more, just have some scissors next to you and just cut a little snip into the gusset to help it spread while you're there. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew this on with the lining side of the gusset facing up, the lining side of the main panel facing down against the bed of the machine. I'm going to use a zipper foot, and I'm going to sew around this entire edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching well at the beginning and the end. Use a stiletto and go slow. It's not that bad. I don't know. I've been sewing a lot of bags with curves lately, so maybe that is challenging and I'm just more used to it, but I don't think it's that bad. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go around the curves just slightly, and I'm just going to kind of snip just around here into the seam allowance through the main panel and the gusset. And this just allows the material to fold over itself once we turn this bag right side out, so it's not so stiff and you don't have those like sections of straight bits. You know what I mean? You want a nice smooth turn. So we cut into the gusset when we're sewing so it can spread around those curves to make it easier for us. But we cut into both of the materials afterwards so that they can fold and move around the way they need to give us a really beautiful finish. There we go. So now I've got my binding over here, and we're going to bind this just like we did the 3D pocket. I like to start at the bottom, and once again I'm going to look at the back of the main panel because that's what I won't be seeing whenever I'm sewing this. And all I'm going to do is just wrap this around, hug it around that seam, make sure it covers the stitching, and then clip in place. And as you go around these corners, you just can stretch it, and it's just so easy. It's so easy. When I attach my binding, when I'm at the end part, I just have it overhang the beginning by like 1 inch. I don't fold anything under. It's all just raw edge. Now we're going to take this back to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch this binding on at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. With the difference in the thickness of the seams, I figure that's the best one. If you want to do it a little bit closer to 3/8 of an inch, you can. I would not do 3/8 of an inch or more, because then you're going to start changing the shape of the bag, and you've already got that nice clean stitching in place. So I like to use a stiletto and a zipper foot and take my time, back stitch at the beginning and the end. All right, I love how the material makes this so easy. I don't know, I've made a lot of bags, and a lot of them are very challenging, and this material combination is just perfect. So make sure you check that you caught everything on the back. If there's a section that you missed, just go back over it one more time. No one's gonna notice. As always, if you use the same color thread as binding, you will never see any of the stitching. Like if I had black stitching on this, it would be a trick of the eyes. Okay, so now grab your back panel and just make sure you have all of your straps and your little loop tucked into the side. We don't want to accidentally sew these into the seams. If you haven't already, open the zipper on your gusset and then lay your gusset exterior right sides together with the back panel. Find that midpoint mark on the top of your gusset and match it up with the midpoint on the top of your back panel. Use your clips to hold these together. Flip this around, match up the midpoints on the bottom. Remember, the seam of your bottom gusset is your midpoint mark. And then find your mark on the side of the back panel. For me, it's a little cutout edge. And that's going to be where you line up the seam between the top and the bottom of your zipper gusset. And pull those right sides together and clip together. Repeat on the other side. And then clip all the straight edges. And I always save the curves for last. But most of this bag is a curve, so There's not many straight edges. And then just like we did before, just tuck in the top and line it up with the gusset. And for these bottom sharp corners, I'm going to just cut about 3 little slits into the seam of the gusset only, so it can easily spread out around those corners when I flatten it out and clip together. Okay, once you have this all clipped, we're gonna flip this over so the back lining side is going to be down against the bed. Smush the top half of your bag down. It's gonna get wrinkled. You gotta accept that. And now we're going to stitch around the clipped edge with the lining of the gusset facing up. Sew at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end. As always, a zipper foot and stiletto are gonna make this a lot easier. Alrighty. That was like, to me, that's like the last hardest part. Now we have to attach the binding, which I always find is easier than stitching it the first time. So just like I did before, I'm just gonna wrap this binding right around the seam. And as I'm attaching it, I'm always looking at the back of the main panel, since I won't see that whenever I'm sewing later. And this way I know it's covering where it needs to cover. And if you want to use double-sided tape on this main panel, you definitely can. That also makes it easier if you just kind of tape your binding down. And then once again, once I get to where I started, I'm going to have it overhang by about anywhere between 1/2 to 1 inch, whatever is easiest for you. You don't want it overhanging too much because then it's hard to line it up. There we go, and just wrap it around and clip in place. All right, once again, I'm going to lay the main lining panel side down, the gusset lining side up, and I'm going to top stitch this binding in place at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Go slow, use your stiletto, zipper foot, you know the drill. Make sure you check all the sides and you caught everything. And now it's time to turn this right side out. And you know, binding is just the best thing ever. Binding is a way to give structure to a bag without having to add a lot of stabilizer. And I just love that. I mean, look how stinking cute this is. Look at this little cutie patootie. It's like a little pouch bag on top of a pouch bag. It's so cute. Okay, so now we just have to finish up the straps. So let's take the rubber band off of your straps. And I'm going to be using rivets for this. So I've got all my equipment. So what we want to do is we want to attach a top strap to the bottom strap. So let's start with the top strap. So with your top strap, keeping it straight, pull it down. Grab your rectangle ring and you're going to thread the top strap from the top around the top of your rectangle ring. Now you can just fold it over once like this by about 1 inch, or you can pull it a little bit more, fold it under by about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, and then fold it again. And so you see the raw edges are now tucked in. That's how I like to do this. And then I'm just going to grab my hole punch and I'm going to punch a hole right in the center of that fold over, and then grab a rivet and put it in. And then there you go. So now the top strap looks like this. Now we're going to grab the bottom strap, keep it straight. You're going to thread it up one side of your strap slider and then over that middle bar and then down the other side just like this. And then you're going to wrap the raw edge from the top where the top of your top strap is, from the top down, thread it through. You might want to move the slider down. And then pull the folded over edge that goes over the middle bar, pull that up just like this. I'm trying to make sure you can see this. Okay, just keeping everything straight. Take that raw edge, slide it up from the right, up over that middle bar, inside the loop, and down the other side. Just like that. So once again, I'm going to fold this over by about 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to tuck it close to that bar and fold it to that inner webbing. So you see, let's see if you guys can see. I have this inner part of the webbing and then I have the outer part of the webbing. The inner part is what I'm focused on. This can be a little tricky, so make sure you look at the guide and the pattern. Then I'm going to grab my hole punch and I'm going to punch a hole through those 3 layers. I have 3 layers because I folded over the edge. And then I'm going to grab a rivet and install that. And then clip it. And now before you set anything, make sure this looks right. So you see you have your top strap, pull it up, your rectangle ring, you can make it shorter, like that, or you can make it longer, like that. Everything is good. Great, so now we're gonna grab our rivet press and we're just gonna set these rivets. Just pull this over and push it down. And this is why I love rivet presses so much, because they make it so quick and easy. And there you go. That's how you do the strap. Now I'm gonna repeat that exact same process for the other 2 pieces of the strap, and then I'll meet you at the end so we can take a look at this bag together. Okay, you see what I said? It's not that challenging, right? Did you follow along? Did you make it? Did you see how we added this pocket? I was so sure we were going to have to like top stitch it onto this panel. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna make it straight, and there's no way I'm gonna be able to hold it down without breaking a needle or something like that. I was so shocked with the method to install this front pocket and how easy it made it. You have to pay attention to the details. You have to focus on the instructions. However, it all makes sense. It's all very intuitive. And then it's like, oh my gosh, why didn't I ever think of that? That's such an easier way to make this type of pocket than what I was imagining it would be. I also love the pop of color on the top webbing. If you have the subscription box, you can put the color on the top or the bottom. I really love it on the top because that way when I wear it, you see, like, that's what you see. You see that difference between the pop of color and then the black. I think that's so cool. I've never really done like a 2 webbing strap before, and now I think I'm gonna do this a lot more. This is a really cool look. So if you make this bag using the tutorial, please make sure you let me know. If you post it on social media, make sure you tag me. Also, if you use the bee box, make sure you tag the Bag Making Bee Club. Obviously, tag the designer if you're making this bag. Everybody wants to see what you're making. I feel like there is a million different incredibly creative things we could do with this. I wish there were more hours in the day because I really want to make this bag so many more times. So I'm just gonna have to live vicariously through you guys. I want to see your version, and especially if you use the material from the box and you kind of mix it up from what I did, send me a picture. I really want to see that. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye guys.